Thank you so much, Mareka, for this great opening. Actually, you very well explained and put a framework on the topic that we are going to discuss. Yesterday, we were here, yesterday afternoon, talking about the latest innovations and trends in mobility. And certainly, when we were talking about this, one very particular topic that the speakers were underlining was about innovation in funding. That was very important because they were talking that that's needed more than ever nowadays because particularly after COVID-19, many of the cities are facing a dilemma. The transport authorities, operators, they are all facing a dilemma. In one hand, they are being requested to increase the level of service. On the other hand, available funding is going day by day down. So we have a great three speakers today. They are coming from three continents. I count Ozgur Bey in a different continent also because he has an operations in two continents. Maybe that could be the only, let's say, operator in the world that has an operation in two different continents. We have Dr. Ozgur Soy, who is CEO for Metro Istanbul, and Dr. Soy is as well the group coordinator for municipal-owned transport operators of Istanbul, including the ferry operator and bus operator. And my second speaker is from Europe, Mr. Lukasz Franek from Poland. He is the director of the Transport Authority of City of Krakow. So welcome, Lukasz. And we have Mr. Tshepo Kgobe. So he's joining us all the way from South Africa. And thank you so much, Mr. Kgobe, for joining us for today. And Mr. Kgobe is the CEO for Gautrain Management Agency, which is the transport authority supervising the transport in cities, including Johannesburg, which is a large metropole in Africa. So we have representatives from authorities and operators, and we will be discussing about resilience in the funding and financing and different practices. And maybe we can even go beyond the funding and financing because it's linked to many of the initiatives. And feel free also if you wish to share some other insights because it's not easy to get these three high-level speakers always together. And I'm sure that the participants will be willing to listen you more on your experience. And let me start with Mr. Kgobe. I mean, on the panel to kick the panel. And what I want to ask is that, Mr. Kgobe, I mean, Gautrain is one of the most important metropolitan areas in Africa that you are facing a rapid growth in terms of the population. And there is increasing demand on mobility. And I wonder how now you are accommodating this increasing demand and what are your ways that you are using to fund the ways that you are using to accommodate?
So thank you, Dr. Kaan. First and foremost, let's explain something. And I'm an engineer, so I'll start with data first. So by its nature, when you think of it, is that 250 people arrive in Gauteng every day. Now, if you calculate that over 365 days, and that's constant, whether it's a weekend, it's a weekday. So we have rapid growth in terms of population. Secondly, we have the highest congestion, and I've seen the congestion in Berlin. Yesterday, there was a few problems, and that was not that bad. In 2025, which is a year from now, the freeway speeds will grind down to 26 kilometers an hour. And 5 years later, it will go down to 10 kilometers an hour. Now, you got to think differently and you got to find innovative solutions on how do you resolve your mobility challenges. Now, if you got to start from what are we resolving? It's not mobility for the sake of mobility. It's about you empowering economies, empowering the ability for cities to grow, because cities that do not have transport, they die. Mobility drives economic development. If you do not have a proper mobility system, your economy just dies in every city. So now, third fact about our province is that we're what we call a global city region. We've got three large cities, which is Johannesburg, which is the financial capital of South Africa. We've got Tshwane or Pretoria, the old Pretoria, which is the capital city of the whole country. And then we've got our Erythropolis city, which is Ekurhuleni, where Johannesburg International or the OR Tambo International Airport is. They sit against each other like literally. So 70% of all our movements in the province are across 3 municipalities. 70%. Now, how do you move 70% of 12 million people across and in the smallest place? And we remain the sixth largest, the province of Gauteng is the sixth largest economy in the whole of Africa. The province itself, not the, what do they call it, not the country. The country is the number one economy in what do they call it, in the continent. But the sixth largest economy of what do they call it, of the continent of Africa is based in that place. Now, to us, mobility is an important issue to what? Economic growth. And if you do not have the right economic growth, you have to think. So innovative ways of being able to think about it is that how do we make sure that we have sustainability? And sustainability goes into how you fund it, how you make your own money, how do you ensure that less and less, most governments don't have money at the current moment. So how do you actually bring in money into the system in itself in such a way that you are still able to expand? We are building an additional 350 kilometers of railway line. That's not cheap. And then we're also building another 400 kilometers of high-speed line out of the province. That in itself, you have to find innovative ways in which you can actually do that.
That's great. I think there is a strong vision I see in South Africa, at least that you are recognizing the importance of the transport for the local economy. What we all know is that any city who is investing to the public transport €1, they generate €4 in the local economy. So that's the main feasibility approach that we could be using. Now I shift to the Lukasz. Lukasz, especially what I want from you is that try to compare for us pre and post-COVID. What kind of things has changed and what was different before COVID and what's different now after COVID from multiple perspectives having impact of funding of public transport?
Okay, I think change a lot, of course, but it would be a very simple answer. First of all, we found out that crowd is not so nice issue, and it's not for us. It was a really challenge to move back with passengers to the public transport because of that. And of course, from the perspective of public transport authority, it's a shock about the finance and the budget, which in case of Polish cities, it's only comes from the municipality budget and from the tickets, yes, from the tickets revenue. So we had quite high tickets revenue. Before pandemic, it was like 50%. Now it's maybe 40. During the pandemic, of course, less. And coming back from 2019, so before the COVID, it's like maybe 10 to 15% more money from the tickets. On one hand, because mostly of tickets price increase, but on the other hand, the cost doubled since last 5 years. Yeah? So it's more and more money needs to be spent from the all general budget of the city. So you need to cut somewhere else, right? Because of course the budget is increasing quite well, but it's not the same increase as the cost. Right? And cost mostly because of the inflation, mostly because of the and inflation means more higher cost of labor, but as well energy. Yes, that's what happens around us, and this unstable life on the earth means that a lot of costs increased. And I think when we for the future, there's on one hand we need we don't within the EMTA organization that they participate, we are pretty sure we are not able to convince more people to public transport without some general change. I mean, with some new offer, new service, new technologies. That's why we are focusing on innovations like DRT systems, right? So we are trying to find out whether there is a solution for suburbs for more effectiveness service. Second is, of course, also more effectiveness due to software. We want to use software more to calculate, to show what is the real cost, because somehow when you have a budget of 300 million euros, it's like, no, it's very easy to get 1 more million for some more service, but it's one and one and one, and then it increased a lot. And in my opinion, we need to find out in the future some improvements within the service, basically on innovations and new services, new ideas. But we need to also take into consideration one major issue. COVID was past, we hope, but the future is a huge change in the generations. For the generations that, for our kids right now, public transport is unflexible, it's not innovative, it's a time loss. That's why they use e-scooters. That's why sharing modes of transport are much more interesting. So, on one hand, we have a lot of budget needs to be spent for the good quality service. On the other hand, next generations, even if you spend billions of euros, might do not treat public transport as attractive one. That's why we need to find new ideas for that, in my opinion.
I think that's a great point. How, with all this, let's say, parameters that are having impact on financial situation, how to keep public transport still attractive. And this question goes to Ozgur Bey, because Lukasz mentioned about inflation, and I don't think anyone nowadays in the world can talk better than you about inflation, Ozgur Bey. And I wonder how you are managing these increasing costs while you are trying to satisfy the passenger needs and create a good level of service.
Yes. Having the highest inflation in the world is probably not something you can brag about, but that's not the only thing. Also, 2 years back, we have been #1 in TomTom traffic index in the world. Well, we are getting better now. As you introduced, I'm CEO of Metro Istanbul, but I'm very recently advancing to another position of being group chairman of transportation in Istanbul. I want to talk very briefly about Istanbul. It's the biggest city in Europe with 16 million of official population, but with the daily commutes and the unregistered people, it's about 20 million. And daily movement in Istanbul is calculated to be around 20 million, including all the car usage, etc. 12 million we calculate is with public transport, including taxis. And out of that number, about 8.5 million are using the Istanbul card daily, which is valid on the buses and metros, etc. Well, it's a very crowded city. Also, geographically, it's very challenging. As you mentioned, it's based on 2 continents. There is the Bosphorus separating the 2 parts of the city. But that's not the only thing. It's also a very longitudinal city. It's only like 8 kilometers width and about 40-50 kilometers of length. So it's very hard in terms of like it's a mission impossible. I'm now advancing to I wanted to say. Well, the main solution, of course, the only chance we have is that in the last 5 years, Istanbul municipality has really used almost all its resources to build new metros. We have been carrying out, we started with 17 metro and tram projects at the same time. And some of them are already finished. Well, we are one of the cities which has much higher numbers now compared to pre-COVID. But that's also because of the new investments. We had the record daily ridership was about 2.2 million. With Metro Istanbul, now it's 3.1 million. And normally in October, November, we expect to have around 3.5 million again. And then we have the second operator in Istanbul. The State Railways is also operating some part. About 4 million will be using the rail systems. This is the only way to go. Well, when you look at the cost figures, of course, it's worth mentioning public transport is something good for the city and good for the country for many reasons. Well, the environmental aspect is very obvious. There is no need to talk about it. Also, economically, it's very good. And in Istanbul, it's very cheap. Istanbul, one full fare ticket is less than 50 euro cents, I can say. And only 24% of people are using the full fare because we have the highest number of reduced tariffs and everyone above 65 can ride the metros and buses free of charge, totally free of charge. Everyone above 60 can use it with 50% of the normal price. And then monthly student ticket costs only like 8 euros per month. And then because of that, we had so many students. We started having so many students in Istanbul. Recently, the number was about 35%. 35% of the riders were students.
It seems that you help for education of the country.
Exactly. We had a very good impact in the. Well, I can give that example. More than 3 million people are entering the university exam, and about only 1 million are really willing to take part in the universities. But we recently passed through the city parliament a new regulation which restricts it up to 30 years. Now no one above 30 years can use the full student fare. Well, with all those aspects, of course, economically and with the inflation, we really a tight situation in terms of economy. Maybe let me talk about the solutions in the second part. I don't want to.
By the
talk
way,
too much.
congratulations, because I just saw in the news that you won European award about your women empowerment program.
Yes, this is one of the things we are really proud of. We had about 5% women in the workforce. Now, only after 4.5 years, it is about 17%. And the one thing we are really proud of is that 1 out of 3 train drivers in Metro Istanbul are women now. This is probably the highest number in the world.
Congratulations, Ozgur Bey, on this one. So, Mr. Kgobe, you mentioned about that every day 250 people are coming to Gautrain. I think it's a very important issue for the global south. If I'm not wrong, I mean, in Asia, every hour there is 18,000 people are moving from villages to the cities. It's like 1 hour ago we met in this booth and already 18,000 people came to the cities in Asia. And in one hand, you need to satisfy this demand, but on the other hand, you need to deliver nice projects to keep the attractivity. And I know that, I mean, you are trying to upgrade your rail, you are trying to extend it. On the other hand, you are trying to introduce some electric buses, even hydrogen is a topic of discussion. How you are planning to fund all these investments?
So there's multiple issues that we need to discuss about what you just asked now. So, and I always say to a lot of people, you have to plan and what do they call it, and design and engineer for tomorrow, but implement today. Now, what it means is that you have to have a plan that enables you to transition. A lot of people tend to think of sustainability as an event. It's not an event. So let me give you an example. When we bought our current buses at the current moment, we bought them as what you call an integrated bus platform. So the integrated bus platform, the entire bus is actually the actual chassis of the bus. So it's a frame. What does that allow us to do? It allows us to be able to transition from the current Euro 6 diesel engines. So it actually has 12 bolts that you unbolt, and there's a cradle that you pull out, and the entire engine comes out. What that allows you to be able to do, it allows you to go to hybrid, it allows you to go to battery, it allows you. So the platform has a lifetime evolution. So you plan, you implement today, because we will not have the entire money. I mean, when we looked at what they call it, at prices for current hydrogen buses, we're easily talking at €500,000 for one bus. Whereas one normal standard bus would probably be €1,000,000 or something of that sort, probably €100,000 or something of that sort. But what that means is that you have to think long term, life cycle planning, but implement for today. One of the other things that we also should be careful with is try by all means to say, can we create smaller proof of concepts and then slowly build up to where you transition from one place to another, and then ultimately, and as I say, it's a transition plan, and a transition plan by its nature, it's very clear. You are today on internal combustion engines. Long-term wise, we're looking at hydrogen, but also it needs to be a just transition. I can today get hydrogen very cheap, which is not green hydrogen. It would easily be brown hydrogen or from any other source from the current, what do they call it, fossil fuel manufacturer in the countries as well. I do not need to go all the way to green hydrogen. Most of our green hydrogen that we will produce in the next 2 years will be exported to Europe, and we will make a whole lot more money. And as a country, we've made a decision that our plan is export the green hydrogen, bring the euros home, and we will then continue long-term wise with us ultimately getting to a point where the green hydrogen can also be used for public transport. In the meantime, we will go through the battery cycle, and then from the battery cycle, then we will go to constant state fuel cells with batteries. And from constant state fuel cells with batteries, then we will go to ultimately to full hydrogen vehicles. But you have to have a roadmap to where you're going. And you also have to be able to have what we call contextual intelligence. Contextual intelligence forces you to be able to say, this is Africa. If I were to remove all the diesel engines immediately now, have I already built the skills for me to transition like that? Do I have the mechanics? Do I have the people who will be able to service these vehicles? Do the whole entire supply chain? And that contextual intelligence matters, because a lot of people are going, well, I'm going to InnoTrans. I saw a bus that is hydrogen. I'm going to Istanbul and I'm putting it on the road. And suddenly, 3 months later, you don't know how to repair the bus. And you have to think about these things in its entirety rather than thinking about it as pockets of issues to do. Again, I say to you, transition and sustainability is not an event. It's a journey, and a journey that you plan for and design for today, or for tomorrow, but implement today with today's solutions so that you can then be able to transition.
Thank you so much. I mean, Mr. Habe, I think it's a great point. Maybe I want to ask one more question to you still, because South Africa was a center of transformation from individual owned and operated minibuses to the corporatization.
Yes.
We saw this example in Reawaya with the Piotrans and so on. There were some challenges, and this was very much working back to back with funding. How is the current situation? What you as an authority also plan in this way forward for funding it?
So we have a lesser known model on the Gautrain, where we've brought on minibus taxi operators. They operate our dedicated feeder and distribution services on various routes. Now, that in itself is sustainable, and it's sustainable in a sense that, first and foremost, you need to understand the pricing model of what do they call it, of what it means to operate those vehicles. And then ultimately, what does it mean for you to make them sustainable and make them profitable? On one of the routes, I have to add a vehicle every 3 months. Every 3 months, the ridership jumps up, and I need more vehicles and I need more vehicles. But you also have to look at it as a long-term plan. How do I transition them from running the minibus taxis, going to minibuses, and then ultimately transforming them to be able to get to a point of what do they call it, of running large buses. There's an issue of corporatization. Now, one of the things that we've done is that in the corporatization, so the taxi associations in every region control what happens. But we haven't made the taxi association the company. We have forced them to be able to set up a separate company, which then means when the elections are held for who is in the taxi association, they do not affect the long-term running of what do they call it, of the entity that sits over here. And that requires you to think long-term. And it's been about 11 years, and everywhere they go around the world, we were planning to come with them here so that they can tell the story themselves, so rather than me, you know. Okay. Yes. So the models on what do they call it on Reavaya and various what do they call it BRTs in itself. At some point in time, they will end up in my hands, and we need to rework those models. The thinking 10, 15 years ago in 2010 when we did the World Cup, it's completely different. They themselves are asking, can we help them out to be able to find a sustainable way in which those entities can actually function better?
I think it's great. And maybe one clarification is that when it's mentioned taxi, it's referred not the meter taxi. It's referring about the minibus taxis in Africa. So Lukasz, I mean, we talk about modernization, I mean, upgrade of the fleets. And I wonder, I mean, nowadays, what are your new initiatives and then how you are funding? And maybe particularly, are you working together with EU institutions to help you in terms of funding?
Yes, of course, but it was really interesting what you said, and it's crucial for now that we plan and we make contracts for next decade, right now. In a time of AI, and everyone says no one knows about the future, nothing right now, yes? I mean, so many, think about 10 years past, yeah? How the world changed, completely changed. And right now we make huge investments in metro, in buses, in trams. Billion of dollars and euros are spent all around in our cities. What if they will show up some basing on, I don't know, AI or something like that, some game changer software, I don't know, maybe from Trapeza, yeah? And everything will change, yeah? For example, I don't know, we'll have, it's just a mix of the new technology and existing systems, yes? There were taxis before Uber show up, right? But it was a game changer for the whole of the world, yeah? So it's, in my opinion, it's a very interesting question that we still basing on a past and basing on current time, we make decisions, we have to make decisions, for example, to contract public transport service. That's what we do in Krakow. So, for example, right now, in 2 weeks, we are going to introduce a new contract with more buses, only CNG buses. So our operators invest in low emission fleet. Rolling stock is, of course, something which is very important concerning the service quality for the customers, for the passengers. But on the other hand, we have a directive on an EU level, yes, that almost half of the fleet should be zero emission, right? Yeah, but it's impossible. I mean, all of the factories around the world should start, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, production for the European, just for the European Union, the buses, to really have at least half of the fleet in our cities zero emission. So it's strange, right? I mean, that we have some directions. We think, okay, e-vehicles, we arrive here by electric cars. So it's still a technology that you have to fit to something. Yes, you have chargers. It's not so flexible, right? You need to spend 1.5 hours to find out in Berlin a charger for your vehicle on the street, right? So maybe not e-vehicles, maybe hydrogen, but hydrogen is still too expensive. CNG, no, gas is not very good right now. So it's only a time of questions. It's only it's not helping to make decisions. What is the future? Yes, what we should invest in, right? What kind of fleet, what kind of energy, and so on. But we have to do this. It's of course we cannot stop and say, let's wait. You cannot go to work tomorrow. You cannot go to the school tomorrow because we need to wait for new solutions or for what will future will looks like. Of course, EU funds are for the cities within your opinion very helpful. 85% usually for the low emission or zero emission vehicles, or for the trams, for railways. Maybe also PPP, I mean private public. We try to do it. It's the only project in Krakow for the tram network. So right now it's under construction, the part of the tramway line, which will be operated with our communal operator with trams. But the management, so the construction and the management is on the private sector side, and we pay them for the next 20 years for the management and so on, and maintenance, of course. And maybe that's a solution for the future because, of course, we cannot base only on the EU funds, yes? And unfortunately, the rolling stock, the buses, the trams, the prices are increasing fast, and that's a huge challenge for us.
I think when you mention about PPP, I think one of the very interesting examples of PPP for public transport in Africa is Gautrain. Gautrain, let's pronounce like this. So Bombela was very interesting. But maybe I want to, before we move to other speakers, Frank, you are an authority in Europe, and I wonder also your opinion on one very popular topic that we are discussing now is free fare public transport. That's very much linked with funding. And what's your opinion on this one? How do you see this free fare public transport?
Yeah, debt and taxes are sure, and I think the first issue is nothing is for free. There's nothing to work. There's nothing is for free. Two examples. Yes, of course we had, as in many cities around, I think not only in Europe, discussion. Let's make it for free, yeah, because there will be more and more passengers because of that. Of course, cost is one of the parameters when you choose the mode of transport, but it's not so important, and it's not a game changer. Yes, and these examples already in medium and large cities. In the small towns, okay, if you have a ticket revenue at the like few percent, you spend more to make a distribution of the tickets. Yes, so it's not it doesn't matter. But Tallinn, I don't know if someone is here from Tallinn, but everyone now knows it was only a politician idea. It's one-way decision. It's very hard to come back when you give something to the inhabitants for free, let's say for free, and you need to come back. It's debt for politician debt, yeah, if you want to do it. So, and in Tallinn it brought only few percent of change, 2 or 3, and a lot of walkers. I mean, walking people, cycling and walking, changing to. If you have right now, if I need to pay €1.5 to go for 1 or 2 stops, I walk, yeah, or I even choose the bicycle. If I have a free transport and I need to just get inside the tram or the bus, then I will choose it. It's not also very good for our active style and our health. Other side, Luxembourg mentioned about, I think they had like 8% tickets revenue. So it was the same like in small towns. And that's a very strange story because you have a very good quality, right? In Luxembourg, you have all trains, buses, and so on, and still very high cost of car usage, yes, parking and so on. But still, this is also a very expensive country, but very rich country. So people still used not public transport. I think as tickets revenue was like a couple of percent, then okay, it's more expensive to spend it on a distribution. Then we can do it for let's say free, but it's still not for free. Everyone in the city, everyone in the country pay for that you travel from point A to point B.
Thank you, Lukasz. I think what was very important is that based on many research, based on many studies, what we see is that the impact of service quality, accessibility, the coverage, and so on is higher than the price levels on the choice of people, whether they choose cars or public transport. So it's very essential that the funding should be prioritized to go for investing to the public transport, to increase the service quality, better technology, better coverage, and so on. Now, I want to come to the Ozgur Bey, the Dr. Soy. So, because you mentioned in your first answer about 17 rail lines at the same time you were constructing in Istanbul. Crazy. So, I mean, because I know that every day during last 3 years, there was 3 new metro line was put into operation. That's the average. And I guess it seems that Istanbul is the main contributor. How you were managing this and how you were funding it?
Before that, I want to pick up from where Lukasz left about free fare transport. As my colleague also said, nothing is free. You either make the riders pay for the costs, or you make everybody pay for the cost, because there's a cost in transportation, in the operation and the investments. But of course, the question is the cost of operation and the investments. It's a huge number, but there's also a social value in more people using the public transport. So it's a decision of the governments and the city governments to make how much they should compensate the real cost of investment and operation to make more people use it. There is always a balance. I'm not a big defender. I'm not a big supporter of free fare because people should also be aware that there's some cost involved in the service given, and also I don't think it's fair to the riders, the real actual riders should get more percent, a more bigger part of the total cost, rather than people not using it. People sitting at home or just walking work should not be carrying the same burden. Coming back to case of Istanbul, of course, 17 is a huge number. It is a bit tied to the politics, of course. When there's an election, it's a good thing to make a big ceremony to start the construction of a metro line. But making the ceremony and actually doing it are two different things. And we had that situation. There were so many ceremonies, but so little kilometers of advancement. And 5 years ago, in Istanbul, the government changed, the city government, and then our Lord Mayor had the big challenge of finding the funding for that. Of course, the funding mostly came from external sources. Of course, credit lines from EBRD and from different banks to take it forward. But the other thing is, of course, managing the expansion. Well, we have used the expansion as a advantage. This is how we increase the number of women in the company so much as well. We had to recruit, and as I said, our kilometers per day and our ridership per day increased by almost 50% in 4 years, about 4 years, and we are now, I think, the fifth largest metro system in Europe, but we will be advancing to number 4 or 3. So this is a big challenge. We have to recruit many people, we have to train the people, and you have to keep the service quality as high as it was. This is always the biggest challenge. Getting more people into the game is the biggest challenge. And also coming back to the point of AI and the big change. Well, I think of AI as the biggest nerd in the world. AI will not take over the world, but people who are harnessing AI will. So, still the biggest challenge in the change of the technology is developing your people and processes to make more use of the new technologies. So AI can make many calculations, but it doesn't understand what you really need. So you need still people to make use of the technology. Of course, it's a big tool for you to manage your costs as well. In our case, with high inflation and the growing service, we have, of course, a big cost burden. We have been able to keep our, in spite of the big increase, we have been able to keep our number of staff really at reasonable levels. We increased the number of staff less than the number of kilometers of number of passengers. So we still have a very reasonable cost base. But I don't think any operator in the world can live solely on the fare prices. So what we try to do is, of course, get more resources of funding. Like one is when you have 3 million people using the system, it's a big stage you can leverage. We have been able to develop many new commercial areas inside the metros. New shops have been rented out, and also the income of the advertisement has been increasing. But still, of course, we are still dependent on the government for some
You said
subsidy.
naming rights as well. You are selling the naming rights of the stations as well.
Yes, this is one source. We have at the moment one big airline company called Pegasus. They have been paying for they have been getting the rights of the station name for 3 years. But there are 3-4 more candidates. This is a good resource of funding as well. But still, it will not. We will still need some subsidy from the city government and the central government.
I can give the example of Dubai on this one, which is very good example for selling the naming rights. They were generating recently $640 million for selling their naming rights of 20 stations. It was incredible amount of money to use for funding public transport. Great discussion, guys. So maybe I can make one more tour very shortly in case you have some additional points to share with the participants before we close.
Thank you. And I think this issue of free public transport is a very topical issue. And I want to raise it properly. You know, in Europe and a lot of cities in and around Europe, you've got in-country investors. But in certain countries, you don't have in-country investors. Now, in PPPs, which I've been in for years, you need policy certainty. The minute you do not have policy certainty, investors do not invest. You need to be careful with it, because where you just somewhere in the middle of a PPP go, well, I'm going to change the prices to zero. I'm not there. I'm told lower the prices. I'm not yet at zero, but at lower the prices so that they become affordable to low-income households. But if I lower the prices at the end of a PPP, we're in the 14th year of our PPP, it's expiring a year and a half from now. Now, what does it mean to the next investors? The next investors are going, well, are you going in the middle of what they call of a PPP going to go, well, I don't think we should be. Now, it's not a problem to make a decision like that. The problem with it is very simple, is who keeps the concessionaire or the operator whole? Because there's nothing for free. I mean, my colleagues have said it clearly. Who keeps the operator or the concessionaire for free? Okay, there's no such a thing. So who keeps the operator whole? And that policy certainty, it's one of the key things that you have to be able to ensure over the long term. Is that you can't be flip-flopping all over the place, and you will kill investment in public transport if just for elections, then you go, well, lower the prices. The people want it. And I just wanted to raise that.
Any last points?
Yeah, we are already exceed the time, so yeah, but it's very interesting topics, and it's we need to think about the future. That's something for me the most important, because otherwise someone will make a change and not necessarily very attractive for the public transport and so on.
What I want to add is this transportation, public transport must be a national level policy. You must take it at a national level, and because those are really big infrastructural investments. So at national level, it has to be taken and also partially funded. So it helps the cities. And as you said, $1 invested can bring over 3 to 4 times the money invested. So at national level, it should be supported and also regulated. This is what I think.
Thank you so much, Ozgur. I think in 45 minutes we covered a lot of topics. It was a very rich discussion. We talked about public-private partnerships, PPPs. We discussed particularly on the free fare public transport, which is a very popular point for a discussion. We talk about role of public transport on a wider economy of the country and on the city. We talk about the governance, how it's linked with the governance. We talk about the funding, the change management transition. So it was great discussion. I would like to thank you, and I would like to ask from our listeners a round of applause for our esteemed speakers.